Hey guys, my name is Loveless, and this time we're back with Quirk Knife. So now we're at chapter 37, and let's get straight into it. Himiko sat as quietly as possible. She had to be good for Shota. If she was good, then she can gain some trust back. And then she can go back to doing vigilante work with Toya and Izuku. Because he was going to wake up. He was probably just super tired. So, Himiko sat properly with her hands folded on top of her desk, her crutches against the wall, and her back completely straight, ignoring the way the other kids continued to shoot looks at her through the lesson Shota was giving. He was a very boring teacher. Himiko looked at the clock and, it's only been 10 minutes? What the heck? She didn't remember school being this boring and slow. Her leg began to bounce up and down ever so slightly, as she resisted the urge to drum her fingers against the desk. Alright, she was bored now. Hitoshi, she whined. Shota abruptly stopped whatever he was reading as all the kids looked up from their books towards the source of the noise. Hitoshi's face went beet red as he turned in his seat. What did we say about being quiet? I have been quiet, Himiko argued back loudly. Super quiet. Well, you're not being quiet now, he whispered, shouted back, face somehow becoming even more red, which Himiko secretly found funny. Is there a problem, Toga? Shota grunted from the front, and Himiko nodded. Yes, there's a huge problem. Shota's face quickly became slightly panicked as he put a book down on the podium. What's the problem? Is it your ankle? Do you need to go back to the hospital? If only those moronic idiots actually gave you some medical attention. I'm dying, Himiko shouted. I'm dying of boredom. Shota's jaw froze open as he slowly thinned his eyes. Are you kidding me right now? Has school always been this boring? Himiko ignored Shota's obvious frustration. I thought this was a hero school. Shouldn't you guys be, beating each other up? When I was training, that's all we did with Izu... never mind. Would you shut up? The blonde whirled around in his seat, Himiko immediately recognizing the boy. You shouldn't even be here, so shut the fuck up and be non-existent. Himiko laughed loudly in a high-pitched tone, startling most of the class, as she pointed straight at Kachan. I should have let you die. Himiko Toga! Shota scolded immediately. That is enough. You'll sit here and behave or I'll send you somewhere else. Do you want me to do that? Oh man, you got called your full name, Hitoshi whispered. I would shut the fuck up if I were you. When he did that to me, it was because he caught Yamada and I throwing knives in the kitchen. We got in a shitload of trouble. Himiko took that to heart and straightened up in her seat. I'm sorry, Shota. I'll be good. You better be. The black-haired man gruffed before struggling to rebalance the textbook on his cast, using his other bandaged arm to flip through the pages. Himiko tried to listen to what they were talking about, but there was something about morals, and she had no interest in it. She instead took to studying the people around the room to keep her busy, trying to guess what their quirks were if she couldn't remember from USJ. That didn't last long before Himiko's anger rised at Kachan's voice while he answered a question from the textbook, blabbing on about quirks. So, yeah, quirks can be on a scale strongest to weakest, especially when factors are taken into account. Morals or not, quirks are important to how people are treated in society. Whether they are treated by someone in a specific way, by accident, or on purpose. It's not that hard to understand, you extras. Very cool. Himiko balled her hands into fists. How dare someone like him have the nerve to say something like that? He was the problem when it came to the classifications of quirks and powers, just as Suzuku. Without thinking, Himiko grabbed one of her crutches like a javelin, and Shota noticed too late as the object arched over Hitoshi's head, coming down narrowly, missing the top of the explosive boy's head. I don't like you. Himiko stood and pounded her fist against the desk after every syllable of her words. Kachan standing up and whirling around as well. You trying to fight me, extra? He roared as explosions sounded from his hands. Hitoshi stood up and putting himself between the two with a tired sigh. Maybe I am. We both know I would win, Himiko shouted back, stepping into the aisle as Kachan did the same, only to be grabbed by a familiar redhead and, if she remembered correctly, Sero. Hitoshi scooped Himiko up and tossed her over her shoulder effortlessly, using the other hand to scoop up both her crutches. He tugged her skirt down slightly to cover her completely before making his way to the door. She's gonna stay with Nezu now. What? Himiko squeaked. He started it. That asshole. Himiko never really liked swearing, but this was different. She was willing to use every single naughty word she ever heard slip from Izuku's mouth, and then some, because this guy really deserved it. Why are people defending him? He didn't start it, Himiko spoke back calmly. You threw a crutch. You know this, Toga. I didn't do shit, she spat back. It was her. Hitoshi turned to look where Himiko was pointing, eyes landing on the desk that was behind her, a girl with brown hair pulled back into a tight ponytail. Please don't blame my classmates for something you clearly did, Hitoshi snorted. Although, maybe if you were blamed Kaminari, I would have believed you. You can't shadow ban me from a literal classroom, she cried. This is anarchy. Do you even know what that word means? Hitoshi grunted, earning a slap to his back from the blonde. This is a constitution. Oh God, Toga, what does that even mean? A confederation. That's just a Canadian agreement from the whole country. This is a vortex. Okay, now you're being stupid. Himiko whined a little until Hitoshi stepped out and slammed the door in her face, the blonde finally sighing in a defeated tone before limping in the taller boy's hold. So, Nezu finally broke the silence while putting his empty cup of tea. Aizawa did mention you had something to tell me. Dabi shrunk in on himself further into a seat, lips tightly pulled as he tapped the pads of his fingers together. Yeah. Nezu nodded towards him to continue, but Dabi really couldn't find the words. Should he even consider himself by the name Dabi anymore? Sometimes he completely forgot his true name was Toya, and the thought of referring to himself as such seems far too scary. Dabi looked up to the creature, then returned to the specific spot on the floor that he's been burning a hole through with his glare for the past dozen minutes. Are you nervous to tell me? Nezu spoke again. You don't have to answer that. Of course. It's more of an observation than a question. Dabi nodded in understanding as he looked at the little trinkets placed on Nezu's desk, eyeing a strange blue one that seemed to be some sort of chain. The principal must have noticed as he leaned forward to push the object closer to Dabi. You can examine it if you like. I just love my little hands on puzzles. It gets your brain working, yet it's so calming all at once. They're quite fascinating, don't you agree? Dabi picked up the object. Its metal was cold to the touch, and he hummed something of an answer, shifting the chains around, seeing the objects shaped like a key trapped within it. It must be the game. He hadn't even noticed how enraptured he was with the stupid toy until Nezu was climbing back into his chair with a fresh cup of tea. So, my friend, are you willing to tell me what's the matter yet? Enlighten me, please. What's on your mind? Perhaps I can help. You never came back to find me at the hospital to ask my real identity. Dabi spoke quietly, keeping his eyes on the trinket. Yes, Nezu admitted. I came to the conclusion that that would be rather pointless. No? I feel that your mind was too preoccupied with pressing matters as I was willing to give you a few days. Is that a problem? Dobby shook his head no in a childish manner as his leg began to bounce in his seat. But I should probably tell you, right? That's right. It would be very helpful than rather hiding it for an unknown amount of time. Dobby tongued at the staple close to his mouth, as he often did when he was conflicted. His hands were to keep busy with the chain. It wouldn't be that hard, removing the key, that is. Or maybe the other thing. Dobby pursed his lips and clicked his tongue quietly. My name is Toya. It felt strange to say it out loud, let alone for a second time that day, to someone he trusted much less than the ones that he was trapped in the car with earlier this morning. Nezu smiled kindly. I appreciate you telling me, Toya, unless you'd rather be called Dobby. The man stilled his movements for a moment. No one had actually outright asked him. Sure, Dobby asked Toga and Izuku to call him one, but he never been approached with that question. Not even Aizawa did that. I don't know, he admitted softly. I really don't know. Nezu hummed. Is there something currently conflicting you? Always. Dobby snorted, quietly giving the small key a little tug. But that's not the problem I have to talk about. Nezu smiled in some sort of patient way, taking a quiet sip of his tea and folding his paws together, simply waiting for Dobby to begin. Where could he begin? So, Dobby continued to focus on the trinket. I had a family before, like a mom and dad, or whatever. Nezu nodded in support. Yes, that does make sense. Are they still around, if you don't mind me asking? Yeah, Dobby responded hoarsely. Yeah, somewhere. Well, I know where, but, whatever. I left eventually. That was obvious because I'm in this situation. But, well, the reason I had to come here is because there's a family member of mine in Aizawa's class. Nezu raised an eyebrow, sharpened in calculated manner. Kyojiro? No. Ah, then it must be Shota Todoroki, am I correct? Dobby's eyes widened. How did you... Intelligence is one of my strengths. Nezu beamed. So don't be surprised. It only makes sense. Katsuki Bakugo was actually my third guess. Dobby chewed his bottom lip and finally looked up from the trinket through his thick eyelashes. So? Nezu parroted. What do you wish to tell me? Dobby didn't understand. Why weren't people freaking out about this? Shouldn't Nezu be more alarmed? And Aizawa and Yamada and Hitoshi? Your brother, I'm assuming, is very strong, although he seems to have no interest in being here. Nezu filled the silence. The other teachers has told me he refused to socialize with his fellow classmates and does not participate in class. Has he always been like that? Dobby thought back to his brother in the early years, the way that he talked too fast for his own tongue to keep up with his words, and carried through the house so everyone was forced to listen. Johto would speak of anything and everything that intrigued him in the slightest, often fixating on a specific topic for long periods of time before randomly moving on to the next. Dobby still remembered the kid that was addicted to rain boots for several weeks for some reason. No, he breathed. He was never quiet, not until Mom was sent away. Nezu didn't force Dobby to finish the thought, instead leaning forward a little more, with almost a sad expression. I know this is personal, but why did you leave? Don't you have 3 other siblings as well? Dobby didn't want to speak about this. He hasn't even sat down with Izuku about this kind of thing, even though the boy would probably be understanding more than most. You know, Nezu leaned back once more. Before I became a hero and a principal, I used to be a test subject. It's rare for creatures like me to have intelligence quirks. Apparently, humans want to take advantage of that. If I never reached out to some heroes I'm well acquainted to with today, I'm too sure that I would be. It's a frightening past, but I do not mention it often. But that's not what I mean. It is non existent. Dobby's eyes trailed the scar through the creature's eye before unknowingly touching his own skin grafts under his eye, running his fingers along the staples. It is why I wish to help you children so much, Nezu said quietly, because I know what it's like. To feel awfully alone, that is. But Dobby wasn't alone. Not anymore. And even when he was, his family still exists. He seemed to forget somehow. Shitty life there, Dobby spat as anger boiled up slightly. He could take everything from me. My quirk, my family, my friends, my own fucking body. Everything belonged to him. I couldn't take it. Nezu didn't flinch as Dobby's voice continued to climb. He's a horrible person. He doesn't deserve the title hero. Nezu, it's not fair. It's not fair. It's not fair. It's not fair. Dobby repeated the phrase over and over and over again, his hands beginning to shake around the trinket, and the smile on his face was not from joy. How dare he call himself a fucking hero? The man spatted angrily. That word doesn't mean shit to me anymore because of him. It's all because of him. Nezu's expression grew dark and sour, and he chuckled. Why? What interesting information this is. Wouldn't you agree? Dobby looked up. What? I've never been a big fan of Endeavor, of course. I don't appreciate his destructive tendencies, but I had no idea about all this. How exciting. Dobby felt sick. How is this shit exciting? How could you say that? Nezu shook his head. You're misunderstanding me, my friend. The creature slowly turned to his computer and typed something in, casting another glare to Dobby with a wide smile. This is exciting because I get to tear someone down without mercy. So? Midoriya laughed nervously while the class stretched after training. Shinso? Hey! Hitoshi cracked his back before bending over and touching his toes. What? Midoriya only laughed louder as her eyes glanced over to Ida and Asui. Then back to Hitoshi. So, do you know the vigilantes? Hitoshi knew it was too suspicious for no one to approach him with this question yet, but it was bound to happen. He wished it didn't have to, though. I don't know what you're talking about, he grumbled, every single pair of eyes on him. It made Hitoshi want to squirm. Well, Midoriya waved her hand around, trying to collect her words. You seem very, acquainted with morphine. Toga, Hitoshi corrected immediately. And maybe I am. What is it to you? You're getting awfully fucking defensive, Bakugo spat. Do you do illegal shit with them? Murder people? What the fuck? Hitoshi couldn't help but laugh. It never ceased to blow his mind on how people love basing all their opinions on what they read online. What a bunch of pigeons. And where did you hear that? Hitoshi smiled at the blind. You read that somewhere? To be fair, Kato, they are vigilantes. They don't follow the rules, and killing people isn't out of range of possibilities, Asui said. Although, don't get me wrong, I'm still grateful that they helped us at USJ. Say, what happened to the other two? The small one, Chaos. He was really injured. Hitoshi stiffened, remembering that while he was here enjoying hero training, Izuku was currently fighting for his life at the hospital alone. What if he woke up and no one was there with him? He would freak out, not to mention he'd get his hands on a weapon and he would probably act backed into a corner. Izuku's like a wild animal. It cannot be certain if you're happy to simply exist, or if they're out for blood when threatened. Shinso? Kaminari called. You're still with us? You okay? Hitoshi noticed his shaky legs and the quickness of his breath. It's fine. You don't seem fine, Yaoyorozu frowned. Is everything alright? Hitoshi straightened up and nuzzled into his scarf, staring into a random space of nothingness as his class stopped stretching, all looking at him with a waiting expression. You're friends with all of them, aren't you? Kaminari asked gently, looking up and visibly nervous. I can tell. You're very on edge today. Hitoshi looked down at the blonde and toed the tip of his shoe against the ground. Yeah, maybe. I can't really say anything. Why not? Ashido frowned. Can you at least tell us if they're okay? They saved our lives, after all. They didn't do shit, Bakugo shouted. I could handle it myself. But you didn't. Hitoshi screamed as he whirled around. He wasn't going to let people walk over his friends. You would be nothing but 6 feet under if it wasn't for chaos, and you know it. That monster thing is planning on crushing you into dirt, along with Todoroki. Bakugo's chest flared out with his nostrils. I don't need any fucking help from the weak. The weak? Hitoshi echoed while wearing an expression of disbelief. You can't be serious. He laughed with wide eyes, breathlessly in pain as he took a few threatening steps forward. You're nothing but an egotistical little prick, you know that? You'll never get anywhere in the hero society with a shit attitude like that, constantly looking down on those around you like you're some sort of god. Let me tell you something, Katsuki. Hitoshi bent to come down nose to nose with the spiky blonde. His red eyes widened in anger and surprise. You're not a god. All you are is a fucking bully. A shitty bully, and it'll never change. That's all you'll ever be. Ever. Hitoshi stood back and chuckled. Chaos is in a coma. He has been since USJ. Don't ask me any more fucking questions or I'll brainwash the shit out of you. No one approached Hitoshi for the rest of the afternoon. Not even Bakugo. Nezu didn't speak much for the rest of the day, leaving Dabi to sit in the same spot and playing with the trinkets on his desk, working through the puzzles and trying to ignore his building anxiety. Toka was distracted with the computer for an hour before she grew restless again, Midnight coming in and bringing her for a walk around the school. Then they ate in Nezu's office with Aizawa and Yamada in silence, Dabi mainly picking at his food and pushing it around before he dumped it onto Toga's plate, the blonde inhaling it like she's been starving for weeks. Then he sat for more time while Nezu was focused on whatever task he was working on. Toga was asleep on the floor, sprawled out dramatically. Dabi eyed the clock for the 5th time that hour, leg bouncing every which way when Nezu finally sighed. You are aware you'll need to meet with your family. It doesn't have to be with your father, but don't you think your siblings deserve to know that you're okay? Dabi's stomach felt like it dropped off Dabi's stomach felt like it dropped off the face of the earth, something he wished he could do with his physical being right now. Don't panic on me. Nezu's voice was clearly calm, keeping him from spiraling further. This doesn't have to be tomorrow, and I will not force you to do this, but you must understand, Toya. Toya, you need to understand that if you wish to have a second chance and take it in full stride, you need to take these jumps of faith. No matter how scary, ignoring this problem will only cause them to build, not go away. Dabi, fuck it, it's an ugly name. Toya, yeah. Toya clenched his hands into fists, breathing slowly as Toga stirred from down below ever so slightly, rolling around and getting more comfortable. Nezu pushed some green tea closer to the man and waited until a sip was taken before smiling once more, although it was more forced than genuine. Nezu's smile seemed sad. Tell me, the creature hummed, what is it that you fear so much about meeting your loved ones once again? Toya paused, breath hitching as he screwed his eyes shut, struggling to get the words out. Is this what Izuku means when he mentions how speaking can be hard? Is that why Izuku will fall silent for several days in a row, even weeks ever so often? His tongue felt weak and useless. It felt like his throat was closing and his jaw was fighting itself to slam shut. But Toya wanted to speak. He needed to. What if he finally got out after many minutes? What if they hate me? Nezu frowned and opened his mouth to respond, but Toya spoke first. I know I would if I were them. It was silent for a long time after that. Nezu simply stared at the shaking man across the desk, face pulled tight in thought and contemplation. Toya's leg began to bounce again, and he grabbed another trinket from the desk. This one made of smooth wood and tapped a rhythm on the solid texture, biting the inside of his cheek. Toya, Nezu asked gently, why do you say they will hate you? It is my understanding that your father wasn't very kind. It's understandable that you felt the need to leave. It was toxic there, correct? Toya stared down at his worn-in leather boots and tapped his toes together quietly for a beat, then answered with a whisper. I left them behind without even saying goodbye. Nezu nodded. But did you really have a choice? That's enough. Toya startled at the shout and took a few steps back, cornering against the wall of the bedroom. Back up, he shouted in return. This is my room. We already trained today. I want to eat something. You haven't earned... I trained for hours, old man. Let me fucking eat some shit. It's been days without a proper fucking meal. I told you cutting back food was necessary if you want to burn your fat to muscle. I don't care. I want to eat. A swift hand came across Toya's face as he slumped down the wall onto his butt, face stinging in pain and burning in embarrassment. Shut up, Endeavor spat. You insolent child. How dare you speak to me like that? You are my creation, my prodigy. You would do as told if you wish to continue living under my roof. Follow my orders. Is that understood? Toya could distinctly hear the laughter from Natsuo and Fumi outside, most likely playing soccer or skipping rope. He couldn't help but be jealous. He hasn't laughed since Mom was taken away. It's been nearly 2 years. Toya, will you follow my orders? Despite the tears burning his eyes and trembling of his bottom lip, Toya snapped his head up with a manic smile, ignoring the red and white strands falling into his eyes. I'd rather die. It happened quickly, as the sound of skin meeting bone echoed through the room for countless minutes, blood splattering onto the ground from Toya's broken nose and raw splitting skin. What a waste of a quirk, Endeavor spat as Toya was tossed into the dresser, causing a picture frame of his mother to topple over and shatter onto the hardwood floor. The old man laughed like something was funny. I've had enough of you. Shoto is all I need now, so die for all I care. I will, Toya shouted back as he fisted the broken glass, feeling the shards stab into his skin and tear up his hands. I hate you. I fucking hate you. Night had fallen, so no one was around to see Endeavor dragging his eldest son by the hair down the hallway. The small legs kicking and bloody hands trying to fight the fist pulling him along. The door opened and Toya was launched out, falling down the steps and slamming the back of his head on the way down, coughing and spluttering through burning tears as they began from his red eyes. Get out of my sight, Endeavor sneered. And let's make this one thing clear. I am the reason your mother lives. She depends on my money. So if you return, your fate will be in your hands. Go disappear. Go die. I don't fucking care anymore. Never let me see that failure of a face again. Toya's eyes widened. No, this is not fit. Leave Mom out of it. You should have thought of the consequences before you made such a mistake. Perhaps Shoto will not fail like you. No. Was Shota about to take his place? Toya never wanted to be trained, but now that his little brother has to face the same fate that he was exposed to, at least Toya didn't start training until he was 7. And most days he spent were at actual facility. He only trained with Endeavor on weekends. But Shoto, Shoto was only 4 when Endeavor decided to start his training. He had started the day his quirk presented. At least Toya could do training first to take the brunt of his anger. But now, Shoto will be stuck by himself all day with that monster. Dad, Toya wailed, you can't. I can, and I just have. I will take care of ridding your existence. Your siblings will forget you. Everyone will. And it's for the best. You're such a disgrace, after all. Get out of my sight before I decide to get more violent. The door was slammed shut, and Toya stayed on his hands and knees while catching his breath, blood still splattering on the pavement below. He was 14. What the fuck was a 14-year-old supposed to do without any money? He couldn't even stay with anyone. Keiko was... Toya shook his head and stood up on shaky legs, ignoring the pain and his spinning of his vision. He couldn't return home. That wasn't his choice. No, I didn't have a choice. No. So why would your siblings hate you? Nezu asked again, leaning across the desk with something burning in his eyes and voice dead serious. Toya's eyes widened. I don't know. You don't know? Nezu echoed. And if you don't know, neither will they. It is clear that leaving your siblings was something very difficult for you, so don't you wish to be with them again? Yes, more than anything. Toya wondered if they would be like Toga, Izuku, Hitoshi, and Mei. Fumi would, that's for sure. But I can't, Toya whispered as his words of his father echoed in his mind. If my old man finds out I'm around my siblings again, it's not an option. A threat, was it? Nezu mumbled under his breath and he turned the computer. Who do I have to eliminate? Whoa! Toya waved his hands. No, not that. Izuku would be upset if I was involved in a murder anyways. But what was the threat? Toya looked out the window and drew a deep breath. Was he really about to do this? You've come so far today, Nezu smiled. Please, let me help you. Toya spilled. So how was everyone's day? Hizashi waved for a response from Shota, Toga, Shinso, and Dabi. Yet no one was quick to respond. Hizashi nodded awkwardly. Alright, I'll start. How about that? My day was pretty good. My students were decently quiet. I had a fantastic talk with Nimue. And yeah, that's about it. Toga, why don't you go? I threw stuff and got banned. Okay, Shinso. I was the one who did the banning and nearly committed murder. Very nice. Dabi, it's Toya now. We'll break down that later. And Sho. Broke up several fights. Students are feral and they make me want to die. Awesome. So today was, a day. Cool. Shota sighed heavily and looked over his shoulder. Shinso, why did All Might approach me with all anxious after your class training? Something about an argument? The boy scoffed and stared out the window with a snarl on his face. All Might can choke on my scarf. I'm being serious. I know you're not exactly a people person, Shinso, but I can't have you causing shit in class, alright? Everyone's already on edge, and I don't need you stirring the pot. Shota responded as he heard Shinso blow something of a raspberry at him, with his eyes still cast out the window. Can we go back to the hospital now? Toga asked quietly, and Shota can only sigh. Not yet. We're going back to the apartment where we're going to feed you brats, and then Hizashi and I are going to figure some stuff out. We can go tomorrow. He's not going anywhere. Cruel joke. Hizashi cringed. But yeah, what Sho said. We need to take care of some things, and I'm sure Izuku just wants rest. You're all very loud. We are not, Toga shouted, eyes wide in realization before clearing her throat and whispering, We are not. You can spend time with Mika, is all she's saying with the little bribe. And you can have some ice cream after dinner. Shota looked in the mirror to see Toga's lips were still pulled into a frown, but she didn't argue and stayed quiet, not saying much. In fact, no one spoke as they returned home. Shinso headed up to his room, slamming his door shut like a teenager he is. Dabi, Toya, the man went to the balcony and shut the door behind him, shutting down and slumping against the rail as Toga hid herself under a pile of blankets with the kittens, her whispered words muffled as she spoke to herself. Hisashi prepared dinner in a strange silence. He didn't even put on the radio to listen to his usual stupid English pop songs. Shota sat himself at the kitchen table while multitasking, both correcting today's quizzes his class had completed, and as well as scrolling through their prefect's housing, writing down different words and numbers he would probably get confused with later. Dinner's ready, Hisashi mumbled as Shota understood what he was asking, shutting his laptop and lifting the blanket from Toga. Time to eat. She looked at him with an irritated expression, scrunching her nose before hobbling onto her feet, grumbling under her breath as she headed to the kitchen. Next, he knocked on the glass and the man spun around, flipping him off with both hands and stalking past him without another word, slamming the door shut with more force than necessary. Shota sighed heavily and blew some stray hairs from his face, making his way down to the hallway and knocked on Shinso's room. It's time to eat, kid. There was no sound of movement inside, so Shota cracked the door open ever so slightly to peek in. His heart nearly missed a beat. Shinso was curled up on his bed with his back to the door, but even with a pillow pressed against his face, his muffled cries could be heard. The kid sounded like he was choking on his own spit. Shota stood in the doorway, panicking for a moment. He wasn't good with emotional stuff. Anger is one thing, but sadness and tears is a whole nother world. With another sigh, Shota forced himself into the room and shut the door, with a loud enough to create some noise. Shinso's back tensed and he sunk a quick breath, the pillow clutched tightly to his chest. Shota sat on the edge of the bed and bit his bottom lip, trying to figure out where to start. He looked over his shoulder to get a better look at the boy, noticing his mauve eyes were wide, and he stared at the wall. Red face and under eye bags worse than normal. What's wrong? Oh, real elegant. Good work, Shota. Shinso huffed. What the fuck do you think? Shota rotated ever so slightly, lifting himself further onto the bed to look at Shinso properly. Both of them slimmed their eyes at one another. I think there is a lot of things you could be upset about right now, Shota hummed, including why you were so snappy with your classmates today. Is it Izuku? Shinso ducked his head again, trying to hide himself, but Shota found himself reaching forward and grabbing the boy's wrist with his good hand, pulling him back to face him. I'm serious, kid. Talk to me. Shinso sat up a little straighter while still holding his pillow, resting his chin on top of it and keeping his red-rimmed eyes on the ceiling. I don't know. I don't know how to feel. It's like my brain's confused. Shota found himself slightly frowning as he placed a gentle hand on the boy's knee. Honestly, me too. Don't tell anyone this, but I actually don't hate the brat like everyone else does. As annoying and loud and stupid he is, I care about him, or whatever. I think I'm scared, sad, and a little happy. Shinso stared at him with a flat face before smiling slightly. You're such a loser. What? Why? The purple-haired boy shook his head with a watery smile, wiping his tears on his pillowcase. Never mind, thanks. Shota found himself smiling as he rolled his eyes. You never answered my question about why I'm upset? That's the truth. I don't know, and that itself is stressing me out. Everything's going wrong and it's fucking stressing me out. Shota moved closer and very awkwardly wrapped an arm around Shinto's shoulders. And you're taking your medication? Yeah. Okay, that's good. Well, things will get better. I know it sounds like a little bullshit, but it will. I just have a feeling. A feeling? Shinto leaned onto Shota's shoulder and looked at him. Sounds stupid to me. You sound stupid. No, you. Shota chuckled and squeezed the boy a little tighter. Do you want to eat? Hazashi made another American meal. Should be interesting. Oh, God. Hitoshi cringed. Hopefully it won't taste like the last meal he made. It smelled good this time. That had to be good news, right? Shinto laughed. Are you asking me that? I think so. Shinto got up and wiped his eyes a few more times, shaking himself out before looking back over his shoulder with a rare soft smile. Thanks, Aizawa. Means a lot. Oh God, did Shota's heart just grow a size? Disgusting. Shinto left the room and Shota sat there for a second more, trying to wrap his mind around what his life had become. His eyebrows raised as he slowly dawned on him the realization that he has become. Wait, am I a fucking dad now? Izuku has now lost the concept of time. Not that he really had it in the first place. He's been stuck in the same position for an infinite eternity. His body ached from fighting against the physical force of nothingness. He couldn't even open his eyes. Was the shadowy creature still watching with his empty expression? It almost felt like Izuku was floating in a void, as if he were simply existing and not living. Why he wanted to open his eyes so bad, he couldn't say for sure. But it was the only thing on his mind right now. All he needed to do was to open his eyes. Why was it so hard? But Izuku, don't you want to be with me again? Huh? I missed you so much, and you're almost here. So why are you turning back? Just come a little closer. Izuku stopped fighting back for a moment because at the sound of his mother's voice, he felt strangely tired. But why would she want him to stay here in infinite void? It was nothing to offer. Yet everywhere else Izuku was trying to go did. He didn't know what the other world was offering, but he knew he wanted to find out. Just keep your eyes closed, and you'll see me soon, honey. No, Izuku could not keep his eyes closed. It wouldn't be right. He missed his mom more than anything, but she can wait. She has to wait. So Izuku took to ignoring her voice as well as the burning in his body, trying everything to move a single muscle of his body. Why was it so difficult? Why couldn't he just be normal? All he wanted to do was go back, even though Izuku wasn't sure where he was trying to go. But luckily, Izuku doesn't have to understand. He trusts them. Hawks continued to stare at Izuku with a burning gaze. He was put in charge of the kid while Midnight went home for the day, and Recovery Girl was busy attending to other things around the hospital. He sat cross-legged on the chair with red feathers piling up in his pockets so his wings wouldn't get in the way. Hawks felt really weak lately, and it's becoming more and more difficult to make himself look natural, even though all the makeup he wore. His skin lost its tan, and his face began to sunken in a little more. And yeah, maybe the stress was beginning to get to him, but he was fine. Everything was fine. Wake up, Hawks asked for the 5th time that hour. His lips pursed as if it would actually work. When Midoriya didn't respond, he sat back down again, resting his chin on the rail of the bed, tilting his head ever so slightly. You know, he mumbled, your friend reminds me of someone. It's been making me feel, sick, I think. Hawk sighed and rolled his face over again. I don't know. I'm probably crazy or whatever. It's not like he's around anymore, but maybe... God, I'm being stupid again. But, what if I'm not? Just, I haven't actually seen his face properly or anything, but he admitted to being my age. I saw the tip of his hair, but it was kinda gray. Hawks ended while mainly questioning himself, continuing on with his ramble. I mean, hair dye exists, so it can't be actual proof, but it's just a vibe that he's giving off. Ugh, just wake up so I can ask you. You're annoying. I'm just kidding. You're not annoying. I'm sure you're a good kid. But seriously, this is getting to me. Wake up and answer my stupid questions. Hawks looked over to the heart monitor and, of course, nothing. Of course. He sat up and leaning over to adjust Midoriya's blankets, smoothing out the wrinkles and making sure it wasn't tucked in too tight, then brushing his hair from his eyes and out of the way of all the tubes. Just wake up, kid. You're scaring everyone. Hawks whispered. I want to meet you properly now. But luckily, Izuku doesn't have to understand. He trusts them. Hawks holded his hands behind his head and staring up at the ceiling, looking down at the boy. With a breathy inhale that was meant to be a chuckle, the blonde placed a gentle hand on Midoriya's torso, giving it a slight squeeze of encouragement. You can do it. Come on. There was no movement from the body, but Hawks tensed at the beeping of the heart monitor picked up ever so slightly. No one else would have noticed the slight increase except for someone like him, who's always on edge. He sat frozen in the same position as the heart rate steadily inclined, becoming louder and louder in the silence and empty room. Something then brushed up against the exposed skin of Hawk's inner wrist, and he pulled back sharply. Midoriya's index finger twitched. Hawk screamed loudly in shock, perhaps fear, excitement? He wasn't sure. But he screamed really fucking loud. Oh my god! He exclaimed as he shot out from his seat, tripping over the leg of the chair and falling hard before stumbling back up, ripping the door open. Where's Recovery Girl? The officer at the door startled and pointed. She's just down the hall talking to someone. Go fucking get her. The poor woman ran off as Hawks streaked back in, chanting wake up over and over again as if casting a spell. Hawks? What's the matter? Recovery Girl waddled in with her cane. Is everything alright? The thing is beeping faster, and he poked me. What? The old woman rushed over faster and got up on a stool to quickly examine Midoriya before her eyes widened, then pressed the blue button on the wall. Midoriya's shoulder twitched and his head jerked slightly. His hair sprawled up on the pillow. His left arm jerked violently and needles ripped out from his skin. Recovery Girl leaned over, holding his arm down, only for the kid's right leg to kick out. Is this a seizure? Hawks asked as Recovery Girl ignored him, focusing on keeping the boy still as a few nurses rushed to inject him with certain medicines that he didn't know. Were you expecting him to wake up so soon? A man asked, sounding quite jostled. Recovery Girl shook her head. I wasn't expecting him to wake up at all. There was a very brief moment of silence before coughing erupted. Several people shouted over one another, removing the tubes. Hawks watched as a long tube was carefully pulled out of Zuko's throat. The blonde wanted to gag by watching. The oxygen mask. Get another IV drip. I need some bandages. He split some healing wounds. I think he just bit me. Give him some space. Hawks peered through the nurses to see Midoriya's nose twitch, green eyelashes fluttering as they pulled back slowly, dull eyes staring up at the ceiling. Midoriya? Hello? Recovery Girl smiled gently. Are you with us? Can you move? The boy didn't respond at first, until he rolled his head to the side, looking right into Hawks' eyes with desperation. His voice came out hoarse and quiet. It was missed by most except the winged hero's sharp ears. Can you do something for me? The kitchen table was painfully awkward, as Hizashi kept trying to make conversation, but no one answered, not even Toga, who usually happily shout around with Hizashi. Guess it's true, blondes are loud. Except for today, that is. Shinto pushed around his food on his plate, while the white-haired man simply stared at his, leaving it completely untouched and still. Your brother hates me, by the way, Shinto grumples. Always staring at me and shit. Makes me want to punch him. Maybe he thinks you're cute. Fuck off. That's gay. Kind of the point. Shut up. Stop it. Shota shouted over the two. I'm not in the mood for this crap. None of us are, Toga sneered. You're not special, old man. Toga, Hizashi frowned. That was mean. Shows, not old. Says you, old man number 2. Shinto stared at Dabi. Toya? For a little longer before throwing a fist, knocking his plate and causing the ketchup to splatter all over the ground, some getting on Mika. Fuck off, the old man roared back, grabbing the purple-haired and throwing the boy right out of his chair, causing him to hit the ground hard and cry out in pain and frustration. Shinto yanked on the white-haired man out of his chair by his ankle. The two immediately began rolling on the ground with fists flying. Toga screamed at them while Shota grabbed his scarf and tossed it on, throwing both boys apart. Shinto was crying again, and the other one was practically shaking in anger, which only made Toga cry. Shota was prepared to yell when his phone suddenly went off, so he immediately pulled it out of his pocket to look at the text. Hawks. Click to download image. Shota frowned when clicked on the image, watching it load while Hizashi looked over his shoulder. The 3 kids slowly inching closer to look at over his hand to see the screen. There it was, a picture of Hawks, face smushed gently against Suzuku, his oxygen mask covering most of his expression. Yet his green eyes were visible, crinkling with a weak smile. Hawks was beaming as well, with pink cheeks, most likely from exhaustion and stress. Recovery Girl spotted in the background with her cane extended towards the back of Hawks' neck. Another notification popped up on his screen. Hawks, you can't get rid of me, bitch. Uzu. Within seconds, the entire household broke out into chaos, everyone trying to gather their shoes and jackets and phones and keys while screaming at one another in pure panic and relief and anxiety and pent-up stress. The screaming didn't stop in the car when Toga only had on one shoe, in which belonged to Hizashi, but at least she was doing better than the other two. Shinto had one ketchup-covered sock, and Toya had somehow lost a shirt. And Hizashi couldn't find his prescription glasses, which meant Shota was the one driving. So that was the reason why they were going 90 on a 60 road. Watch the red light! Red light! Shinto cried as Shota went right through the intersection illegally, eyes blown wide in concentration, like this was some sort of real-life Mario Kart game. You're such a bad driver, Toga shrieked as he nearly swerved into the wrong lane, and Toya shouted back. You're right, Hitoshi. The gays can't drive. Maybe you should have drive. Boy, do I have news for you then. Wait, Toshi, I said Shota. Wrong fucking side of the road. Shota swerved back over as Hizashi screamed. We're gonna die before we even get to the hospital. Yeah, maybe. Yay, I did it. Oh, I'm so relieved. I was really trying to get this one done, like, within a timely manner because it's been so long. I didn't even know that it's been 3 months since I posted a Quirk Knife video until one of my subscribers, or I think subscriber, decided to ask 37 ? And I was like, wait a minute. It's like, let me check. And then I see 3 months. I'm a little embarrassed, but I got it done. So now I'm thinking about doing Malito next, because that's also one of the ones that I haven't done, and I think that hasn't been done in like 5 months. So yeah, I kind of distracted myself. And then also with the tooth pain, that didn't help. Well, the whole procedure with the dentist and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So, if you want to see more of this, you know what to do. And also, one of the subscribers didn't know what I meant when I said you know what to do. I meant like the normal YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, all that stuff. Yeah. So, bye.